Sorry for the little snag in starting. Good evening. I'm State Senator Barbara Favola. Thank you for joining our Facebook Live Town Hall. I wanted to give you a brief update on the agenda before lawmakers when we return to Richmond on August 18th. It will be a special session, and we expect it to be a fairly short special session compared to our usual regular sessions. So one of the main things on our agenda would be police reform and criminal justice reform. Uh, we are very motivated to make some changes, changes that are very much needed. Democratic caucus has been busy. We have been holding hearings through Zoom across the Commonwealth. We've heard from many stakeholder groups. We want to understand the issues more fully, and we want to come up with meaningful solutions. We are really looking for transformational changes that will eradicate systemic racism across the board, but especially in the areas of policing and our criminal justice system. The Senate Democrats put out a press release just a while ago, which outlines some of the topics we will be covering and some of our specific legislative proposals. For example, one bucket that we are talking about is bringing equity to Virginia policing. And under this bucket, we have a number of legislative proposals. We would prohibit no-knock warrants. We would prohibit the hiring of officers who have been fired or resigned due to a use of force investigation. It's critically important that individuals don't get rotated to other police departments when we know, and there's a history of inappropriate policing. We want to create a decertification procedure for law enforcement officers. We do want to ban chokeholds and strangleholds. I think that's become very obvious given the incredible tragedy we all witnessed regarding the George Floyd incident. We want to mandate that de-escalation always be tried first, and that's a very important step. We want to essentially transform the way we do policing in this country. We want to change the culture of policing. We do want to create a duty to intervene. And for example, we want to tie 599 funding, that is state funding that goes to our local police departments. So we want to tie that to the accurate and more comprehensive reporting of police stops, so we have a better understanding of what's actually going on, when inappropriate force might be used, and what the profile would be of the offenders who are stopped. So those are some of the very specific items under the police reform bucket. We know that they're not complete. We are working with the House. They too are coming up with proposals. We're hoping we can coalesce around several of these and actually pass some in the special session. And I want you to understand that this will be a process. We're not going to fix everything overnight. We will continue to work on these issues in the General Assembly in 2021 and continue thereafter. We are looking at expanding local authority in the area of policing. And two areas that are specific under the local authority is we will enable local governments to establish a civilian review board. And under our legislative proposal, the civilian review board would be able to petition a judge to gain a subpoena so they can do an adequate investigation of records and other material evidence that may be important in determining whether a police officer should be disciplined or decertified. And we are going to hopefully create incentives for local governments to create crises intervention models. Again, many of us believe that so often a police officer is not necessarily needed when a call comes into 911. A mental health worker would be a better responder. There are models throughout the country where there's a co-responding, a mental health officer, a mental health professional, and a police officer both go out on a call. Sometimes a mobile crisis unit is called to de-escalate a situation, which is also a good model. So we very much want local governments to work hard at changing the culture of policing and creating the support systems necessary to help individuals, to help offenders who are really acting out not because of malintent or the desire to commit a crime, but because of some other reason, be it a mental health crisis, a developmental disability, or we would say a differently abled situation, whether somebody is on substance abuse, either legal or illegal. There are often many complicated reasons why an offender is acting out, and more often than not, if we have a mental health professional on the site, the situation can be better handled in a more appropriate, more humane fashion. We do want to restore courts and the prosecutors' flexibility to effect mercy, is how we would say it. So we want to confirm a prosecutor's authority to drop a charge, and we want to enhance the court's ability to expunge records for dismissed charges. And that's very important. I know that's very important to members in the House of Delegates, and we'll see if we can get some meaningful legislation. We want to reduce racial profiling, and in an effort to do that, we're going to prohibit searches of person or vehicles based on the odor of marijuana without probable cause for other offenses. We think that would go a long way. We want to restore equity to the sentencing process, and this is another very important area that needs improvement. So we want to require agencies to, for example, determine the cost savings when an individual avoids going to jail, so we can get a better sense of the dollars saved when we actually implement more progressive policies. And we also want to allow for earned sentence credit for good behavior. And I have heard from many of you that this is an important element. I agree with you. Earned sentence credit is something we need to move forward with. We do have a draft bill. And then, of course, there's some COVID relief related bills that, again, affect prison reform. For example, we could have an early release of individuals who are a certain age or disability. If they've served a certain amount of time, releasing them early from prison, again, would be the right thing to do, particularly since we're suffering a COVID crisis, and it would also save us money. So that's a very broad overview of where we're heading. It is not meant to be comprehensive. We will continue to hold hearings. I chair the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee, so a lot of the prison reform legislation would come through my committee. I encourage all of you, if you have comments that you would like to share with lawmakers on the respective committees, they'd be my committee and Judiciary in the Senate, please submit your comments through an email to public_comment@senate.virginia, spelled out, .gov. So I do want to thank you in advance to all the groups who have commented. Stakeholders have actually been very thoughtful, and we appreciate that, and we promise that we will act. So that's great. Thank you very much. We are going to, of course, during special session, we have to review the governor's adjustments to our budget. We did suffer a reduction in resources and revenues coming in, but it was not as great as we expected, which I guess is good news. The CARES money we received can only be used for COVID-related expenses. We cannot backfill holes that were in our budget because we had to reallocate money. But I will tell you that hopefully this next stimulus package will pass. Every version we have seen does provide state governments with a lot more flexibility. So we may be able to shift money around with this new stimulus package. I know there are significant needs in our public schools, in our higher education systems, and in our healthcare systems. And we are aware of those needs, and we are going to try very hard to keep our safety net systems whole. It will be a challenge, but we will definitely try to do that. Some of you should be aware that we did, the governor did through an executive order adopt pretty aggressive worker safety standards, which we are very proud of. In fact, Virginia's lauded as having some of the best worker safety regulations right now in the country, and that's going to be very helpful. We know individuals need to return to work. We want our economy to start moving again, but we need to do it safely, and we need to do it responsibly. And I think we've taken a big first step in that area. The other legislation that we will consider during special session has to be directly related to the COVID emergency. So I'm not sure what bills will fall under that rubric. I am working on a paid sick day bill, again related to COVID, and hopefully we can come to some agreement on that. I'm happy to take questions. Okay, first question came in is, how can we reduce the number of Black men in prison? And in addition, what are your thoughts on solitary confinement, incarcerating youth, and providing educational opportunities? Wow, that's a really multifaceted question. Good, very good question. Well, we need to, reducing the number of Black and brown people in prison, I think is a really important goal, and I want to strive for that goal. We're trying to change the whole way we police. We're trying to change the way the criminal justice system responds to offenders, especially Black and brown offenders. And we've got to provide opportunities, I think, very early on in individuals' lives to take different paths. I would like to invest more in public education, in early childhood education. I think we need more counselors in our public schools. So individuals who are struggling or need additional help, those issues can be identified early, and our students can get the help they need. It does not help society to graduate individuals who don't have job skills, who are not reading at a reasonable level, and they therefore don't have opportunities. That doesn't help us. And I think we need to start working on good, productive, successful options for every individual in society very early on. I know I've been a big supporter of adding additional dollars to our at-risk schools. I have worked hard to reduce class sizes, particularly in our communities where we are suffering a high percentage of children on free and reduced lunch. I think we need to do a better job in finding internships and other opportunities where our young people can succeed, and targeting resources to areas that need them to achieve these goals is very important in my view. I do not agree with solitary confinement. I think it should be abolished. It is incredibly damaging. Again, 90% of individuals who are in jail are released to society. And the longer the period, if they happen to be in solitary confinement, the longer they are in solitary confinement, the less able they are to gain the socialization skills, the behavioral skills, the other skills necessary to succeed when they're released from prison. I think solitary confinement should be abolished, and we need to work on that. I know the law enforcement folks tell us, oh, sometimes people are put in solitary confinement for their own safety, et cetera, et cetera. I think not having contact with another human being for extended periods of time is incredibly damaging and has long-lasting mental health effects. So that's something we have to work hard at changing. I did patron a bill last year. There were several bill patrons asking for data on solitary confinement, with the goal of coming up with a policy to one day just eradicate it, just eliminate it completely. And I can't remember the other part of the question. Okay. Next question is, will Virginia be ready to implement mail-in voting for the November election? That is my goal, and that is the goal of many elected officials. COVID-19 will still be with us in November, and we absolutely have to find a safe way for people to vote. And we want as many people as possible to vote. This is a presidential election, and the vote is your most powerful tool. It is the action you can take that will affect change. And we need to empower individuals to do that. This past General Assembly session, we passed laws that I think will facilitate that. We have no excuse absentee voting now, which is great. We can start voting 45 days before the election. So local registrars can work with the local boards of election to decide what voting places will be open on what days, but we could start 45 days before the election. We also, in terms of mailing in your ballot, you now have, as long as the ballot is postmarked and received by noon the Friday after the election, it shall be counted. And we removed the photo ID requirement that had been on the books, in my view, simply to depress voter turnout. So these have been great steps forward. We still need to do more. I would like to remove the second signature required on your absentee ballot, but there is a case being litigated right now in our court system, arguing that that second signature is a barrier to exercising your right to vote. So let's see how that turns out, and hopefully the courts will rule towards removing that second signature. I understand that myself and other lawmakers are very interested in putting money into enabling local registrars to contact voters and ask them to request an absentee ballot. So we're going to try to do an enormous amount of outreach. I know there is some concern about the Postal Service. So I expect that jurisdictions will be able to arrange for lock boxes at some places that are, sort of publicly frequented, like libraries and maybe community centers. Individuals will be able to drop off their ballots, at the registrar's office. So we're going to do everything we can to encourage vote by mail, and we're going to try to put some resources on the table so jurisdictions have what they need to get the word out. The way our code currently reads, the voter must request the absentee ballot. So, but that's easy enough to do. You can do it. You go online and do it. You can do it by phone. You can do it by mail. But you can start early, and you can start requesting now, and the ballots will be mailed again 45 days before the election. What are some of the other questions? Somebody asked, how can you help me understand how defunding the police will make communities safer? I think the whole intent around defunding police, which that nomenclature, unfortunately, is subject to a lot of different interpretations. But the intent, I believe, on defunding the police is not to necessarily take resources away from policing. It's to redirect those resources to a different type of policing. And I think that's what we need to remember. Again, I'd like to change the culture of policing. I would like mental health workers to be available when the situations necessitate a mental health worker. I would like to have more community-based treatment programs, and I think when we talk about policing, we need to think more about building trust with our communities. We need to talk about building stronger relationships with every sector of our community. And of course, it's important the police force needs to look like the community they're policing. And we need to really expect police to protect and be guardians, and not to adopt a militaristic approach. So I think we have a long way to go in getting to this more appropriate model. Houston, again, for example, has, in Houston, Texas, they have in place a process where if somebody calls 911, the dispatcher is trained to identify right then and there who should go out on the call. And if a mental health worker should go out on the call, a police officer would only come to ensure safety. The mental health worker would be the site supervisor, would be responsible for dealing with the offender. And it has worked miracles in Houston. So there are different ways of addressing what the traditional role of policing should be. What are some of the other questions? I did talk a little bit about civilian review boards. We're calling them civilian review boards rather than citizen review boards, but I do understand the intent of the question. Civilian review boards, we have a couple in the Commonwealth. The ones that are most successful do have local support, and they have a wide range of expertise on the review board. So, again, we've got different, psychologists, community stakeholders, law enforcement representatives. We have a wide range of people. And our legislation will put some teeth into those civilian review boards. But it is permissive. The local governments would have to decide to initiate them. But there is interest at the state level of ensuring that, there's certain standards, that there must be certain standards for decertifying a police because of behavior, and that if a police officer is decertified, he or she is just not rotated to another jurisdiction. And that's a really important element. the emphasis, I think, from my constituents and from other stakeholders has been really improving the transparency and accountability of police. And I think that's very important. I think these body cams, for example, uh, have really shown citizens and residents of communities what exactly is going on when a police stops somebody. And that kind of transparency and accountability is really important if you want to ensure that the police reflect the values and police in a racially equitable way. So we are looking at all different tools to increase accountability and transparency. Um, oh, thank you. There's another question here about being evicted from my apartment, which has to do with the crises we're under right now regarding rent and the inability of some folks to pay their rent because of unemployment and the fact that the federal unemployment benefit, that $600 a week, ended this past week, July 31st, and individuals still have rent to pay, landlords still have mortgages to pay. I know there's going to be action in the General Assembly to increase the funding available to help tenants. I know the expectation will be that agreements can be worked out between tenants and landlords. So a rental payment moving forward is actually doable. I know there's got to be opportunities for complete rent relief. Some individuals can't afford to pay back rent. The governor has asked the Virginia Supreme Court to put a moratorium on evictions. We have not yet heard back from the Supreme Court, but I, for one, believe there should absolutely be a moratorium. I would like the governor to exercise this authority through his executive powers. Right now, we're going to wait and see what the Supreme Court does, but I do not believe we should have any evictions right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and individuals have to remain safe, and their communities need to remain safe, and evictions are not the way to go. So we're working on it, and many of us are rolling up our sleeves and trying to get dollars out as quickly as possible. The governor did allot $50 million to various nonprofits throughout the state to help get money out to those facing eviction. So if you are facing eviction, I suggest first you call your local, your county or city housing office and advise them of what's going on. You may want to talk to your local churches, and there should be nonprofits in your community that might be able to help you as well. But I would start with the local housing office. Okay, let me continue. As you know, we are in phase 3, every part of the Commonwealth except Hampton Roads. So to my Northern Virginia constituents, kudos. We will be hopefully continuing in phase 3. That doesn't mean we should stop wearing masks. In fact, the progress we're making is the result of so many of you agreeing to wear your masks and washing your hands and doing social distancing. We really need to continue that. It's incredibly important for lots of reasons. We want to keep ourselves, our families, our communities safe, and we want to enable places of employment to open. And they can only open if workers and patrons actually follow the guidelines. So So we need to be vigilant, continue to be vigilant on that. The governor's executive order on phase 3 does not have a deadline. So I don't know how long it will be in effect, but we need to keep working to ensure that we can stay in phase 3. I think the governor has made it clear if we do see an uptick in cases, he will roll back some of the liberties that have been associated with phase 3. Actually, Northern Virginia has had a percentage reduction in the number of cases, and this is true even though we've increased testing. Just a few weeks ago, our 7-day average of cases was about 7.5%, and now it's down to about 6%. So that is truly remarkable. And we need to, again, make more tests available. I think we have to do a better job of creating more community testing sites. And remember, these testing sites are open to the public. We are not asking about residency or your address. We only need your zip code. We're not asking about insurance. These tests are free, and we are working with laboratories that are giving us a pretty quick turnaround. So that's good. And we are also doing contact tracing. So we need to keep that up. Contact tracing has become more of a challenge than we ever expected. Individuals come in contact with lots of people, and we have to be very socially and culturally sensitive when we, ask individuals about who they've been in touch with. In fact, the governor just announced today, to make it a lot easier on the contact tracing, there is an app that I think I have a link to the information on the app, which will enable you to know who you've been in touch with, and might be a lot easier in doing the contact tracing. Oh, thank you. There's a question about my paid sick day bill. Well, I'm continuing to work on the paid sick day bill. We've got, I've been working with some representatives of labor and the governor's office and some faith-based groups, and yes, even some business groups. I've crafted a bill that would provide some paid sick days as a result of COVID-19. And we're hoping we can get something passed during the General Assembly session. I just think it's incredibly important that our those working, long days in our essential essential businesses, do have some paid sick days. So we're going to see where that goes. I'm hopeful, and thank you for the question. Is there another question here that I missed? There will be, we're hoping that we'll be able to provide money. The question has to do with providing dollars to our K through 12 school systems, so they can get the cleaning supplies and have the PPE available, so they can open maybe on a reduced schedule in some cases. And that's one of the topics we need to look at when we review the budget. We do know our school systems that it is very costly to reopen, even partially. And we are very much aware of how our school systems are struggling. And there have also been issues transitioning to online learning. And I know the state has made available some model curriculum tracks, so teachers can tap into some resources. It's a challenge to put a whole course online. I'm aware of that. So So we're working on that, and we really need to ensure that every student in every school system has the technology tool he or she needs and has access to broadband. And that's a really big deal. I mean, many jurisdictions have created hotspots if there are spaces in their jurisdictions that are sort of dead spaces when it comes to internet access, but we have to eradicate those. Everybody needs access to broadband and they need reliable internet service. It is one of those necessities of the 21st century, and not having it merely exasperates the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and we have to correct that. And there are steps underway to do that. One question, I've heard the term qualified immunity being used when describing the lack of police accountability. Can you tell me more about this and what is being done? Qualified immunity is a very interesting concept. You know, it's qualified meaning you, under certain conditions, a public official could not be sued, is sort of the general context of qualified immunity. And there's a Supreme Court ruling on just how extensive immunity should go, and when and under what conditions should individuals in public service have immunity. So it's a topic that people have brought up. They would like to see changes in the immunity extended to police. And I am not expecting we're going to make that change during this special session. I think we need to study this issue a lot more. It's very complicated, and we have to really understand the Supreme Court decision before we start tinkering with the laws. But I do understand your question, and again, we're trying to get towards accountability and transparency, and accountability is an important element here. And thank you for the question. Another question came in: who is affected by proposals to eliminate single-family housing? Well, I'm not sure exactly where this question is heading. If it's about creating more affordable housing, yes, we have to do that. I know there are studies going on at the various localities are looking at duplexes and single-room occupancies and multifamily housing, and the goal is to provide more housing that's more affordable to a larger number of people. And I think that's a good goal. I don't think that anybody's necessarily talking about eliminating single-family housing. I think everybody's talking about adding different housing options. You know, and that's probably what we need to do. We need a lot of different housing options so we have a wider range of affordability. Question came in: what should I do now that I will no longer be receiving $600 a week in CARE Act benefits? I am worried about paying my bills. Do you think benefits will be extended soon? That's a great question. I just think it's incredibly sad and hurtful and damaging that the U.S. Senate has not acted on a bill. The House of Representatives sent a bill to the U.S. Senate 12 weeks ago, and they're now just talking about it, negotiating it, and we're hopeful that some agreement will come out by the end of the week, and maybe President Trump will sign it next week. It has taken way too long, and I think that Mitch McConnell's been out of touch with real people and their needs, which is unfortunate. So I can't tell you for sure when a deal will be reached. We're just, those of us who are sort of looking at this world, just have good guesses. There isn't any talk that I know of extending the $600 benefit per week. There is talk of covering 70% of your previous employment check rather than the $600, calculating a 70% payment to you each week, which sounds pretty complicated and difficult to calculate. So I'm not sure what the agreement will finally be, but yes, it needs to happen soon. They are talking about another one-time benefit of $1,200, but that will be one time. I'm just checking my phone for additional. If we see a COVID vaccine at the end of 2020 or early on in 2021, will my kids be returning to school for in-person instruction? Well, I think it's the hope, if there's a vaccine, we can start sort of getting back to what we would consider normal activities. It will depend on how widely available the vaccine is, but I do know there's a need to start in-person instruction, and school administrators know that, and certainly our parents have been telling us. I worry about our younger students who may not be focused enough to sit through an online lesson, or students who maybe have special needs and would do much better having that one-on-one instruction with a special ed teacher. I do worry that some children are really falling behind. In-person instruction is really important, and I'm hoping that if in fact we get a vaccine, we can start in-person instruction. But let me be clear, this is a decision that's done at the local level, and school systems will work with their school boards, talk to parents, have a pretty elaborate public input process, and then make their decisions. When will the public be able to see the proposed slate of bills the Senate Democrats are putting forward? Well, somebody from Senator Servel's office just responded and said that the bills have been sent to our clerk in the Senate, and once they're sent to the clerk, they are then referred to our committees, and they become available to the public. So it sounds like within the next day or two, the bills will be available to the public. We do encourage you to read them. Oftentimes the devil's in the detail, and we want to make sure we get the wording right, that we achieve the goal we want to achieve. So I would encourage you to continue to check our public websites and access the bills as they become public. And again, it should be within the next few days. Oh, another question. I've had problems getting through to the Virginia Unemployment Office. I know they must be inundated. They have been inundated with calls. It has been a struggle, and maybe we need to get more personnel working in the unemployment office. It's very discouraging. I've had constituents say they've waited 7, 8, 9 weeks and still have not gotten a response. And in the meanwhile, bills keep piling up. Individuals are under incredible financial stress, and nothing is more disheartening than not getting a response. So this is going to be a very important priority to lawmakers, and it will be something that we push the governor to make improvements on. I read that the governor, another question, I read that the governor joined a compact with other states to incentivize businesses to produce COVID tests. Do you think this is a viable plan? And if so, how soon do you think we'll see more tests? I think it's a plan worth pursuing. What's going on now are individual states are competing with each other to purchase tests, COVID-19 tests. We're all looking at a variety of different tests that are out there. We want those that are most easily administered, because we want people to come and be tested. So we want the test to be easily administered, and we also want the laboratory backup to be able to accurately evaluate the test. So if you're going to be making bulk purchases, I think having more purchasing power is better than having less. And so being part of a plan with other states will give us more purchasing power. That in the long run, that may really help. I do not know when we'll see more tests, but I know we have to keep reaching our 10,000 a day goal of testing. That's really important. And doing the contact tracing, and now this new app will help us. That's really important as well, because that's how we can contain the spread. If individuals, if they're asymptomatic, but they got tested and they all of a sudden find out they actually do have COVID, then they can self-quarantine. They can stop themselves from spreading it to other people. And we can contact those who had been in touch or who had been near those who have tested positive and get them to self-quarantine. It is the only way we can really contain this. So we have to keep testing. Oh gosh, I just got a question from somebody who said, I recently got a ballot and a postage page envelope. Thank you for bringing this up. I don't know if any of you were watching the news at 6 o'clock today. I guess it was Channel 7. Well, somehow a nonprofit, and I want to say the Center for Voter Information, sent out applications for absentee ballots throughout Virginia. And on many of those mailers, they had the application for the absentee ballot, and they had a self-addressed envelope on the inside with the address of the local registrar where you should return your application to. The problem is that address was incorrect on many of the mailers that went out. 5 general jurisdictions in the Commonwealth received these mailers, this information in an envelope, and when they opened it up and looked at the self-addressed envelope that was intended to be used to mail back the application, the address was wrong. And those were some of our largest jurisdictions: Fairfax, Roanoke, Franklin County, and there may have been another, and I'm missing it right now. So it was very confusing. I'm advising individuals, if they want to the easiest and the surest thing is to go to your local registrar site online, ask for your absentee ballot application, fill it out, and mail it back to the right location. Now, on the news today, there was a statement that if registrars get requests for absentee ballots that were mailed incorrectly to the wrong address, they will forward them to the correct address or to the correct registrar. But, that's yet one other step. So it was an unfortunate mistake. If you go to the State Board of Elections, they have a news release out explaining what I just said, and I think I put a link to the news release on my Facebook page. So thank you for the question. It was very confusing, and a lot of people did call my office today. Last question received. Thank you for this briefing. How will you communicate progress along the way regarding the special session? I have been usually sending out newsletters, and I also do Zoom meetings. During the spring, I had a Zoom meeting about every 2 weeks. So after special session, which is coming up August 18th, I don't know how long it'll last, but we're hoping no longer than a week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, I don't know. I will send out a newsletter right after special session, letting you know what passed, what progress we made, what we still need to do, where we need to focus in 2021. And I will likely have maybe a Zoom meeting or another Facebook Live meeting to answer questions, which I always find very helpful. I am very fortunate. My Facebook viewers send in great questions that are on the minds of lots of people. So hearing what you have to say directly is always been very helpful to me. So I will keep you posted. So you can sign up for my newsletter if you go to my website. You can sign up there. There's a form submission, I think, that you could put down your email. And you can check my Facebook page. We usually have a link to my newsletters as well. So thanks for the question. I have time for one more question. If one has come in, excuse me, I'm going to check. Okay, another question came through. When do you start considering legislation for the next session, 2021? Great question. Surprisingly, right now, I can put in legislative requests for the special session, which is right around the corner, and for the 2021 session, which will start, I believe, the first Wednesday after January 1st in 2021. So I will seriously start considering legislation for 2021 after the special session. I want to see what passes. I want to see where the deliberations lead us, and I will be putting in legislation in October and November for 2021. I will continue to focus on some foster youth issues and some guardianship opportunities for grandparents and others, so our children don't have to go into foster care. I continue to work very diligently on those. I will also continue my quest to make healthcare more accessible and more affordable. This past year, I passed a bill which was pretty landmark. It now stops surprise billing, surprise medical bills. If you go to an emergency room or if you have a scheduled operation and a provider is out of your network, he or she can no longer send you a medical bill. Your insurance company is now responsible for making a customary or reasonable offer to the doctor, and the doctor can decide to take the offer or go into arbitration. So that's great. And this bill affects all state regulated insurance plans, and those insurance plans that are self-insured can opt in. So stay tuned. It was a big piece of legislation. I'm very, very proud I was able to get it passed, and I will be working to do lots of other things to stabilize our insurance market prices, to hopefully offer more insurance options, more affordable options on the exchange, whether there's a public option or not. I'm sort of following what the feds might be doing at this moment. So, and then I will continue with, the police reform and criminal justice reform and other really important issues like stabilizing our housing market, ensuring that we don't have unnecessary evictions, and helping workers really achieve what they need so they can keep their families safe and continue to participate mightily in our economy. So that's it for 2021. Julia, is there anything else I don't know who the participants are on this Facebook Live, but thank you. If there are other legislative offices, I see that there are probably staff from other legislative offices. Appreciate you tuning in. I also, if there happen to be other lawmakers, I can't tell, so forgive me. If there are other lawmakers, please go into my chat or wherever and say hi so I can acknowledge you. And I am happy to continue to have these meetings. If you find them helpful, I will continue to do either Zoom or Facebook Live, and sometimes I get special guests. So there are no other questions, and I appreciate your participation, and I will sign off. Thank you so much, and have a great evening and stay safe.